2013 Dodge Avenger. This car experienced a no start right now. Lady was driving this car, and right before she gets to her house, car just died in the middle of the road. She could not crank the engine anymore, and car is here. Let's put the key in, put it so you can see we got everything on the dash, and when I turn the crank, nothing happens. Now what I noticed, my park neutral switch does not indicate in what position it is anymore. You can see it's all lit up. I mean, reverse, neutral, drive, third, low, nothing. So that's one clue. Generally, I would start this as a no crank. I would start from my cranking circuit, starting circuit, I'm sorry, but this being a case where a car just died in the middle of the road, I think something else is going on. I'm thinking maybe blown fuse, something with the computer. And first what I'm going to do, I'm just going to plug in my simple scan tool just to see if I can communicate with the power control module. I don't want to open my virus yet, plug in the virus, because sometimes that tool can tell me there's no communication even though there is. So I'm just going to use the generic OBD2, plug in the scan tool, and to see what's going on here. Key is on. Let's see. Yeah, it's in on position. Okay, well, looks like it's alive. The main computer is alive. That's good. No codes. Huh. Let's see if he can give any data. Well, that's weird. Everything's there. Coolant 45, air intake 37. That's correct. So our 5-volt reference is working. So computer is alive for sure. Okay, and at this point I'm gonna plug in a virus and scan all other modules, see if I can see what's going on with the transmission control module. Okay, it looks like we have 4 codes in the engine, in PCM, and 4 in the TCM, and some in the gateway, HVAC, I don't care about that. So, okay, that's cool. ASD main sense circuit, ASD relay. Okay. Generator field control circuit open. Transmission range sensor rationality. There's a lot of crap. Huh. Okay. Let's go ahead and clear all these codes and see what comes back. This is, well, my concern also is generator, of course, the alternator, because she was driving, cannot crank anymore. But it seemed to me the the battery is okay, and I should have something going on. When you look at your dome light, when I turn it in a crank position, nothing's happening, meaning there is absolutely no control to the starter circuit whatsoever. It's nothing happening. So let's go ahead and clear these codes and see what comes back. Okay, let's go back. Let's go scan again. Okay, so we're down to 1 code. Okay, so we need to figure out what's going on with the ASD main sense circuit. Okay, cool. Alright, I'm just hoping that this is not starter control. That's interesting. Okay, well, let's just grab the diagram and see what are we doing. ASD relay. Okay. Well, this is the unfortunately, this ASD relay is part of the fuse box, and it's not serviceable. You can see on the live data the ASD relay state is false. Now the cranking, the ignition start switch is actually working. You can see it goes from on and off, on. So it is receiving the signal to crank the engine over, but because of the ASD relay, it's not doing it. And this is that integrated power module, whatever it's called, basically the whole fuse box, and this is not good. Now here's the diagram. This is our ASD relay. This yellow and brown wire, and we go to second page. And it's right there, and it's all integrated into this. It's this TIPM, totally integrated power module. So it's inside of it, and there's nothing I can do. It's not like I guess we need to check this fuse. Seems like this fuse, it's feeding engine control, run, start ignition. We can check that. Okay. There is a ASD relay output fuse. Output fuses. So that's interesting. Okay, so this should be control actually. Okay, so this should be control from the power control module, and it goes here, down to this brown wire. So let's go back to this next one. It's number 7. Power distribution center, ASD relay output to fuses. Okay, so there it says ASD main relay, which is kind of odd the way it's been. So, okay, well, let's see if we can find this relay, but it's very confusing. What's what here? I had to Google to find the location of the ASD relay. It's this guy here. Now as I'm moving the relay, I moved it a little bit. I did not hear any clicking. Seems like the relay is not energized, and so let's go ahead and we should have 2 power feeds according to diagram. I have my test light going to the battery ground. I'm going to touch this, make sure it's working. You can see it does. Now this is my red and black is control side, green and blue are load side. So I should have power feed on one of these. I got here. Okay, so that's good. So of course I don't have power feed here because I'm not. So I should have power on this leg as well. So that's not happening right now. So let's see, I'm hoping that I don't have a power feed on one of these wires. If I do, that means I'm not having control from the okay. So actually this is my control side. Basically I can hear the relay clicking right now. Hear that? Yeah. And then I should have a power now, since there you go. So now if I provide the ground, the car should start actually. Okay, so let's see if it's going to start or not. So basically what I'm doing right now, I hope you guys hear the relay clicking, and if I have another test light I should have the power now on this leg here, and let's just see if it's going to start or not. So basically I'm just energizing the relay with my test light, because at this point I don't have a control from my power control module to turn the relay on. Okay, so battery is dead, but I can hear that little click, and so let's go ahead and just go ahead. I still have false, well, but maybe, there you go, see that? Now it's true. Well, that's kind of weird. Let's go. Great. Okay. Well, maybe my relay is no longer energized. I need to check that real quick. So I was cycling the key, and you can see that's at some point it was going to true and then goes to false again. And let's see that? I'm actually in cranking position right now. Now let's go ahead and remove the test light and see if anything changes here or not. Connect the test light and de-energize the relay. I'm going to cycle the key again to see if it's going to see that. I'm cycling the key on and off. Sorry, but it just stays false because it doesn't see the ground on that circuit. Let's go ahead and jump start the car with the relay energized and see if it's going to run. Okay, well that's interesting. Right now it's actually working. Okay, so I'm turning key on and off. Now it's saying true, false. Okay, and I'm having my meter across my ASD relay on the control side, and when I turn the key in a on position, you can see actually it's energizing the relay, which is actually good. It's something I actually did not check. See, the trouble is with this ASD relay, it just stays energized for a moment and then goes out, and that was my fault. Seems like we have a low battery, of course. Let's go ahead and jump start the car. Maybe we have an alternator issue instead of ASD relay. I was thinking the ASD relay stays energized all the time, but it doesn't. So, all right, let's jump start the car. So I'm going to check this leg here to make sure the relay it's closing. Just because it's clicking doesn't mean it's closing. So we now know this is our power feed on the power side, and then once we turn the key on, we should close the circuit, and we should have power on this leg here, and the test light should lit up. Well, it does. So why is flagging the code for ASD relay? Doesn't make any sense. Is that everything we need to have? I'm confused here. I don't understand why. Why is flagging the code for ASD relay? I mean, it's working. It's clear codes. And this ASD relay came right in. It says true and then false. So I don't understand why it's flagging the code. Okay, so let's see this ignition start switch. when I'm in a it says on. So let's go find that relay and see why the engine is not cranking. It should crank anyway. Whether we have a, I mean, we had this you know, this ignition switch, it was working regardless of the ASD relay fault code, but the engine is not cranking at all now. I mean, I have a good power feed, so it should do something, but it's not doing anything. Let's check that relay real quick. Alright, so I gotta walk away from the ASD relay. I need to, that works okay. I'm not sure why it's flagging the code for that, but the reason the engine is not cranking right now is because there is no indication in what gear the shifter is. The park neutral switch does not work. That's a present gear neutral, which actually technically it should if it's flagging that, it should crank. That's weird. When I reverse, nothing changes there. So let's okay, so I'm just kind of trying to key in a crank position and nothing's happening here. So anyhow, I think I need to go here because it's not going to crank the engine until we fix this thing here. Yeah, it's just not. It's an outer stick, which this guy doesn't even have that. Move the air filter to get down to a connector for a park neutral switch, and it's this guy here. Now my dark blue, first it's a yellow and dark blue wire. This one here is a my signal for neutral and park. Now the there's a ground wire. I already checked that it's fine. It's one of these two here. So it is receiving the ground. So basically the computer is sending, the transmission control module sending the voltage to each of these wires, and as the shifter is moving, it's going to drop the voltage down. So I have a good ground. So let's go ahead and check the as we change the as we move the shifter from park neutral and all that, see if the voltage is changing. And right now I have my voltmeter hooked up. Here's my ground here, and it's back probed to that yellow and blue wire. Right now I have a half a volt. It's basically a zero, which is a little higher than it should be, but I'm in park right now. Let's shift to a reverse, and you can see it changes to 10 volts. The battery is low again, but that's okay. We're just testing the switch. Now when I shift to neutral, it should drop to zero again, and it does. And then it's here's a drive, third gear, low gear. It's interesting, in the low gear it's moving. That's interesting, but I think it's just my battery is low. That's just the battery. So let's just see, that's the system voltage. But anyhow, when I go to neutral now, it's at zero, park at zero. So that means it's working. So park goes to reverse, goes to battery voltage. The neutral, zero again. Everything is working. I'm not sure why the transmission control module is not seeing it doesn't see the signal. It says it's false, but it's working fine. I just cleared the codes from transmission control module, and now it sees the park. Let's just go to reverse, neutral, drive. Okay, well, it should crank now. Alright, so as soon as I turn in a crank position, it goes stupid. Alright. So let's see. This is because the I got it unplugged. So now we're going back to ASD relay again. Alright, so now we know the switch is working, transmission is receiving the now we're going back to ASD relay. This is crazy. Let's go back. Clear codes, yes. Alright. So the Asd relay is the reason why all this is going on. Okay. So here's something interesting. I was just kind of moving stuff around, and I'm just going to check the voltage again on my relay, and I had my ground for my meter on the engine block, and I'm measuring like 5 volts, and I was like, well, that doesn't right, doesn't make any sense. So now I have a my lead on my meter, ground on my positive here. Okay, when I touch here, I have 13 volts. All right, now let's touch the block. 5 volts on the block. And any other places I'm scraping the still reading 5 volts. I have a bad ground on the block. Anywhere I touch reads 5 volts. I need to find where my ground is. I think I got it. Alright, so that's now I got my black cable, you know, on the ground here, on the ground here. When I touch my transmission block, I have 12 volts, which I'm supposed to have because I got my lead on my battery positive right now from my meter. Okay, so right now no voltage drop, 12 volts. Let's move the cable off. The same point, 4.6 volts. Okay, the key is on. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this back on again. Make sure you got a good ground. Let's see if this sucker's gonna start. Son of a bitch. Let's find this freaking ground point. Let's go ahead and move this cable off. Barely running. Okay. I'm just gonna clean up this ground point here. That looks fine. You know, this is the cable that goes from the battery to this post here, which was okay. Now our problem is actually on this wire here, and it looks fine on this end, and most likely it's the end that goes in, it is bolted to the block of the engine. Well, the problem was actually this ground, which really it looked fine to me. I don't understand why. You know, guys could see it was just a tiny bit of a corrosion, nothing to it. So right now I'm on with my meter, I'm on the battery positive here, and I go to the ground, and I actually have 11.8 volts. So there's another problem. It's with the alternator, looks like. And I just replaced this alternator back in the summer, maybe 3-4 months ago. It's the refurbished unit, and now I have to check that out. And but anyhow, it's running okay now, so to speak, but multiple issues, just crazy. Anyhow, the ground was problem for sure. There was a pure luck finding this ground problem. And now if you go to a you know, the way you should really check the voltage drop, you should go ground to ground, and if I move my lead to battery ground, it's pretty much 5 millivolts, which is nothing. The code wise, this is the only one intake air. Let's just do it one more time. Yeah. And but let's go park, reverse, neutral, drive. Alright, so I gotta get this in the garage and test the alternator now. So we're gonna test two control wires on the alternator and the main battery cable. And on this we've got two wires. One is a sensing circuit, one is a control from the PCM. Both of those actually go to the PCM, and we should have some kind of battery voltage on it, some kind of voltage on it. Once lead of the meter is on the ground. I'm reading 11 volts on one wire, and go to another one. .6 volts. That's okay with me. So it's interesting that we do not have a battery light illuminated on our dash. It should, because it's, you know, we don't have a, it's kind of crazy. But now let's go ahead and check the voltage drop on the main cable. I'm going to move it to a positive here, and you know, it should be around, I don't know, a couple hundred millivolts or such. I'm just going to touch the main cable, and there's nothing there. So we're going to new alternator. I'm going to move it here. Alright, we're good. So we're going to change the alternator now. Another alternator. It was under warranty, and charging system voltage is 14.7 now. Everything is okay. One thing I did not do when I was testing my alternator, I did not check the ground on the alternator itself. Just basically you take one lead to the ground, and the other lead you touch the case of the alternator. I didn't do that because I already kind of addressed my ground issue anyway, so that's something I missed. I should do it, but I didn't. Anyhow, we checked the main battery cable. Power to power voltage drop was okay. Those two control wires, one is the sensing circuit, one is the control circuit. Basically, on the sensing circuit you should have a system voltage, and on the control circuit for power control module you should have some kind of voltage. You know, it depends of the system of the voltage output. Computer is gonna send different, you know, voltage to the alternator to control output. So anyhow, as long as you have some kind of voltage, you're gonna be fine, and we're good now. And of course, this explains our code for Asd Relay. Of course, the relay has to be energized all the time, and that kind of goofed me off as well during this diagnosis. I was like, there's no way that Asd Relay should be energized for like a couple of seconds and shut off. Doesn't make any sense. And I got my leads on my meter. On the control side, you can see it's of course energized all the time. And but having a bad ground, I'm sure that the ground for the transmission control module and the power control module is coming from the engine block, and that's why everything gets goofed off. Computer doesn't have a good ground, it doesn't know what it's doing, and of course the Asd relay has to be energized all the time. When I activate my Asd relay with my test light, I was expecting the car to run. Of course it did not. So really kind of, you know, I didn't connect all the dots right away, but now it's of course clear it's a bad ground that, you know, computer cannot work right. So let's just go ahead and turn the key off. Now it's actually going to look like it takes a while to actually shut off the relay to go back to sleep. There you go, now it's off. Turn it back on, key on. You see that? That's actually, let's see here. It turns on the relay and then it shuts off unless you crank the engine over. So let's go ahead and crank it and energize the relay right on. Okay. It's interesting. So the key on, the relay does not stay energized all the time. It just stays unless you crank the engine, and now it's running again. It's energized again, so okay, that's good to know, I guess. Took it for a test drive, so far so good. Everything runs fine. Park, reverse, neutral, drive, third, low, everything's functioning okay. Okay. This thing kicked my ass big time. The lesson I've learned here is that every time we can, we should have our test leads connected straight to a battery post instead of getting the ground from the block or the body of the car. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to get to the battery, but every time we can, we should really do that. And this one, I didn't even know, to be honest, when I started working on this car, I didn't even know where the battery was. I was thinking maybe it's in the trunk or under the seat or somewhere. That I'm being actually at right in front of the driver front wheel. And now definitely a trouble codes are completely misleading. It took me a whole different route. Why I did not checking my cranking circuit, because of the park neutral switch that was in fault. I didn't even know if the computer would energize the starter circuit. I would probably check that later on, but at this point, as I was working on it, there's no reason to check that, because it's just not going to do anything, because every time I turn my key into crank position, nothing was going on. I mean, I didn't hear a click or anything, so I knew that the computer did not energizing the starter relay. Next, when I was checking my park neutral switch at the transmission, it just happened, and this is just I mean, you know, better be lucky than good, because as I was moving my instruments around, my test light and my voltmeter, at some point I connect the ground lead of my meter to the transmission itself. And then you guys remember when I was checking the signals that comes from the transmission switch, we had like a 10 volts, and well, it was supposed to, well, the problem was because I didn't know, I had a battery cables, I had a jumper cables connected to another car to boost the battery was low, and you know, of course, car is not running, so I was thinking maybe this whole time the jumper cables are on the battery, and you know, I should have a 13 volts because that car was running, but I had a 10 volts on my control wire, on one of the signal wires, and I thought maybe I bumped the cable, maybe, you know, that's just the system voltage. The problem also, sometimes you don't know what voltage computer actually sends to the signal circuit. It can be 5 volts, 8 volts, 10 volts, battery voltage, you don't know. So when I was looking at that, I didn't really, you know, didn't really connect any dots there. And the funny thing was, I did not film that. I used the test light to check the ground, and it lit up on me, so that was fine. And you can see as I was shifting my you know, shifter, the signal voltage was dropping down, the shifter, I mean the transmission switch was working fine, and then I said, well, and at that point in time, I still had my lead of my meter connected to transmission, and I said, well, it's not the problem with my park neutral switch. It's working fine, and I got to go back to Asd Relay, and it just happened that I actually wanted to check the voltage with my voltmeter instead of using a test light, and I connected my lead to my one of the feeds on my relay, and I was reading like something like 7-8 volts or something like that, and so that's because I was losing 5 volts from the ground wire. Now get back to a transmission switch. You know, we were seeing the 10 volts. We were supposed to see a battery voltage, system voltage of 13 volts, but because of I was losing 5 volts on my ground side, that's why the meter was showing 10 volts. I hope that makes sense, or 13 volts, whatever. And then again, so I went back to Asd Relay. I had my lead connecting to my transmission. I checked the voltage, and I was having a like 7 volts. I said, this doesn't make any sense. And then I start checking actually the ground on my block, and that's when I realized that I'm looking at this 5 volts, and I was like, well, is this real or not? I mean, is this my meter tricked me? And I would move my leads, checking the meter and all that. And you know, finally I was like, well, this is real. I'm having a voltage drop, you know, on my block, and by using my then I use a battery cable, and I connect one end to the battery to a good ground, and one to the block, and you could see that at that time I was able to start the car, and then it was like great. So then how to find the voltage drop, where is it actually drop? I just said, well, since I had that point right there, the ground point. I just kind of cleaned it up anyway, but I really thought it was going to be on the block itself, on the other side of the cable. What I should do, as car was running, I could take my meter, put it on battery ground, and then just go from a certain point on my wire, and I could actually find a drop right there at the bolt on that ground point. Now I'm asking myself a question. Since I changed the alternator back in the summer, I had to disconnect that cable off, and you know, maybe I did not get it tight enough, but it was, you know, when I loosened it up, it was tight. So it was like something else in my mind, another variable, you know how that could happen. And nothing was really rusted out. I don't understand. Anyhow, back then, I said, great, the car is running, and then I just was like, cool, I'm just gonna, you know, take it back to the customer. And so I just checked the charging voltage, make sure that all that okay, and all of a sudden I have 11.5 volts. I said, now I have another problem here as well. And now this may be the alternator went out because of the bad ground. It was probably pumping more amps than it should because of the bad ground. So I don't know, that could be the case. But anyhow, this alternator was still under warranty. I got new one in, and everything's fine now. Nothing is, everything is running okay. Again, when you're checking the alternator, it's pretty straightforward. You check the ground, check the power, your main cable, and on your control wires, you should have on one, most of the time you have battery voltage. On another one, you're going to have some kind of pulse modulated signal coming from the power control module. I just use a meter. I could see the 8 volts. It was good enough for me to know, okay, this is okay. I just need to change the alternator. On this car, I couldn't recall changing the alternator, what steps I took. I actually did drop the AC pump to remove the alternator from the bottom. You could not pull the alternator up through between the engine intake manifold and the radiator, so I had to drop it from the bottom, and just like 3 bolts on the AC pump, just unbolted. I didn't have to recharge the system. Everything was intact. I just was able to move the pump to the side to drop the alternator down. Belt was a little painful because it's wrapped like around 17 pulleys and all that. Nick helped me doing that. And that's about it. Really, really bizarre case study. I was I was actually diagnosed in this car as I was filming it. Nothing was done before, and honestly, I was leaning toward a bad, maybe blown fuse of some sort. Now, something else also is kind of weird to me, that most of the time when you have a bad ground, the modules go crazy, stuff is kind of clicking, the relays are clicking, or but here was, this thing was just dead. There's nothing going on, nothing under the hood, no sounds whatsoever. And anyhow, I hope this was not going to be too long, but very, very interesting case. And I'm not sure if at some point, I guess I would, my next step would probably check in the power and ground at the transmission control module, because obviously, we were getting a signal. The transmission control module was receiving the signal from, well, of course you can have broken wires and stuff, but the transmission switch was working. It was sending the signal, but the transmission control module was not receiving, and so because of the background, it was goofed off. It didn't know what was going on. So at some point, probably I would start checking powers and grounds in the on power control module and transmission control module. I would probably go back to Asd Relay and all that crazy stuff. But yeah, it's really crazy, interesting for sure. And all right, guys. Well, I hope you guys gonna enjoy this one. And remember, always use the battery as your ground reference, because it can really mess you up big time. See you next time, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.